The air in the Greensboro Senior Center's main hall is thick with the scent of lukewarm coffee and stale Danish pastry. Above the low murmur of bingo calls and casual gossip, the fluorescent lights hum with an indifferent buzz. Eleanor Ellie Armstrong, 68, sharp, impeccably dressed in a tailored cream blazer, but her posture is rigid with effort, stands by the refreshment table, holding a fragile porcelain cup. Her hand, though trembling slightly, keeps the cup perfectly level. She is talking, or trying to talk, to Martha Hollis, 72, the self-appointed social queen, dripping in gold jewelry. Across the room, Robert Rob Jenkins, 70, quiet, handsome in a craggy, lived-in way, wearing a worn leather jacket over a simple sweater, watches them. He stands near the exit, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his gaze a hot, steady beam fixed only on Ellie. No one else in the room matters. Martha leans in, her smile a thin, surgical incision. "Honestly, Ellie," Martha says, her voice carrying just enough to puncture the surrounding quiet. "It's sweet you keep coming to these things, but you're not fooling anyone. It's been, what, 4 years since George passed? And you're still wearing that ring. It's time to move on." Ellie's breath catches, a small, sharp gasp that she swallows instantly. The tremor in her hand intensifies. She sees Rob's silhouette shift near the door, a movement like a hawk adjusting its wings. "Martha, I appreciate your concern," Ellie replies, her voice dangerously smooth, like ice cracking. "But my decisions about my own life and my own grief are hardly a topic for the social hour." Martha lets out a staged, pitying sigh, patting Ellie's arm with a heavy, diamond-encrusted hand. "Oh, darling, it's not grief. It's about being realistic. You and George were happy, yes, but you're not getting any younger. And this place? It's a market, honey. And right now, you're looking like the last loaf on the shelf, still wrapped in 4-year-old plastic. No one wants to buy what they think is already claimed." The public shaming hits Ellie like a physical blow. The coffee cup rattles against the saucer. She feels the familiar burn of tears, not of sadness, but of pure, white-hot humiliation. Her cheeks flush a deep scarlet. Several heads turn. The low hum of gossip spikes. They are all watching, judging. "And honestly, this little friendship with Rob," Martha continues, leaning in closer, lowering her voice to a malicious stage whisper. "It's just confusing everyone. You two sit together, you walk together, but he's never made a move, has he? He's clearly not serious. Or maybe he's just waiting for you to get out of those widow's weeds. You're scaring him off, dear. You're scaring everyone off." Ellie feels the ground tilt. She can't breathe. Her elegant composure, her only armor, is splintering. She opens her mouth to deliver a cutting retort, but no sound comes out. All she can do is stare into the cup, fixating on the tiny, swirling reflection of the harsh fluorescent light. Suddenly, a presence is beside her, a powerful anchor. Rob is there. He doesn't speak to Martha. He doesn't even look at her. His focus is solely on Ellie. He reaches out slowly, his large, calloused hand, a mechanic's hand, a carpenter's hand, gently covering hers on the saucer. His touch is rough, warm, and utterly steady. The rattling stops immediately. He doesn't squeeze, just covers, a shield of pure, quiet strength. Ellie's eyes shoot up to meet his. Up close, his eyes are a startling, clear blue, etched with the fine lines of 1,000 unspoken worries and memories. She sees the tension in the set of his jaw, the deep furrow between his brows, but the look he gives her is a silent, searing apology for the cruelty she just endured. "I see you. I know." "It's getting late, Elle," Rob says, his voice a low rumble, devoid of aggression, yet possessing an undeniable authority that silences Martha instantly. He still hasn't looked at the other woman. He doesn't ask. He doesn't suggest. He simply claims the next moment. "I told Mike I'd help him with the transmission before dinner. Let's go." He gently slides the coffee cup out of her grasp and places it, without a sound, onto the table. He takes her elbow, the movement proprietary and firm. It is a quiet extraction. Ellie's breath rushes out in a ragged sigh. She doesn't look back at Martha, who is left sputtering, her smug expression melting into one of stunned irritation. As they walk away, his solid shoulder brushing hers, Ellie grips the soft, worn leather of his jacket sleeve. She can still feel the heat of his hand on hers, a physical residue of protection. Rob drives his 1978 Ford F-150, a lovingly maintained beast of a truck, through the quiet oak-lined streets. The truck smells faintly of motor oil, old leather, and a woody, subtle aftershave. Ellie sits beside him, the window cracked, letting in the cool late afternoon air. She is still vibrating with adrenaline and shame. "You didn't have to do that, Rob," she says finally, staring straight ahead. Her voice is small, choked. She's trying to regain her composure, the steel spine she'd always prided herself on. Rob keeps his eyes on the road, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Yes, I did," he states simply. It's not an argument, it's a fact, as solid and unyielding as the engine block under the hood. "She was right, though," Ellie whispers, the words barely audible over the rumble of the truck's engine. About me, George's ring, the way I hold on to things. She made me sound pathetic." Rob slows the truck, pulling over to the side of a quiet residential street, stopping beneath the massive, sprawling canopy of an ancient oak. The setting sun filters through the leaves, casting stripes of gold and deep shadow across the dashboard. He turns the engine off. The sudden silence is vast. He finally turns to her, his profile sharp against the failing light. "You are not pathetic, Ellie," he says, his voice low and intense. "You are the bravest person I know. You loved a man, and you miss him. That is not a flaw, it is a testament." He reaches out, and again, the touch is deliberate, weighted with meaning. He doesn't reach for her hand or her face. He reaches for the gold wedding band still on her finger. He gently touches the smooth metal with his thumb, not trying to take it off, but acknowledging its existence, its significance. "She said I was scaring you off," Ellie confesses, her voice breaking on the last word. A single tear escapes and traces a path through the light dust on her cheek. Rob's blue eyes soften. He looks directly into her soul, past the blazer, past the practiced smile, past the widow's grief. "Look at me, Elle." He waits until her eyes meet his. 4 years. You know why I've waited 4 years? She shakes her head, mute. "Because I love you," he says, the 3 words delivered without fanfare, without demand, simply as a fundamental truth. "I have loved you since the day George introduced us at the town fair 10 years ago. And you laughed so hard at my awful joke about the prize pig that you nearly snorted lemonade through your nose." Ellie manages a watery, choked laugh at the memory. "But you were his wife. You were his," Rob continues, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "And I respect the man you chose. I respect the life you built. And I respected your grief. I know what I feel for you. I know what I want. But I wouldn't dare ask you to step 1 foot toward me until you decided you were ready to step away from the edge of the grave." His hand slides down from her face, stopping at the delicate silver locket she wears beneath her blouse. She always clutches it when she's anxious. It was a gift from George. "That locket," Rob says, his voice gentler now. "It's George. It's your history. And that ring, that's your commitment. I don't want to replace any of it, Elle. I want to stand beside it, if you choose to let me." He pulls his hand away, returning it to the steering wheel. He's given her everything: his confession, his respect, his patience. The ball is entirely in her court. The risk of this confession hangs heavy in the cab. Ellie looks at her wedding band. She thinks of Martha's cruel words, looking like the last loaf on the shelf, still wrapped in 4-year-old plastic. She thinks of Rob, who has seen her at her worst, at George's funeral, tearing up George's garden, sitting silent and empty at the senior center, and still called her the bravest person he knows. She reaches a decision. It is monumental, terrifying, and exhilarating. Ellie takes a deep breath. She reaches her left hand up, touches the smooth, cool gold of the band, and with a small, definitive gesture, slides it off her finger. It feels impossibly light, yet heavy with the weight of her past. She doesn't cast it aside. She doesn't drop it. She closes her palm around it, tucking the ring securely into the small, zipped pocket inside her blazer. It is now a memory, not a shackle. She looks at Rob, who is watching her with an expression of open, breathtaking hope. Martha Hollis is going to have a stroke, Ellie says, a genuine, strong smile finally breaking through her distress. Rob's relief is palpable. A slow, heart-stopping smile spreads across his face. "Let's give her something to talk about, Elle," he says, his voice a low promise. He leans in, his movement not a demand but a tender offering. He kisses her. It is a soft, deep kiss, years of longing, friendship, and unspoken respect pouring into the connection. It is the beginning of their new history. Over the next 6 weeks, their relationship blooms in private, focusing entirely on those small, intimate moments. Ellie stops coming to the senior center. She and Rob build their own world. Ellie spends an entire Saturday in Rob's cluttered, fragrant workshop, a mix of sawdust, solvent, and freshly planed oak. She is wearing a pair of old jeans and Rob's oversized flannel shirt. She isn't helping, she is simply present. Rob is restoring a massive, ornate antique clock, a project he'd been putting off for months. As he concentrates, his brow furrowed, she studies the way the late morning light catches the silver in his hair. She walks over and, without a word, simply runs her thumb across the sawdust smudge on his cheek. He stops sanding, closes his eyes for a second, and presses his face into her touch before returning to his work, his focus renewed. She has claimed her place in his space. They are in Ellie's backyard. George had always cultivated a meticulously organized rose garden. Rob, who only knows rough, wild landscaping, is helping Ellie transform it into a looser, more natural space, planting climbing hydrangeas and wild lavender. They dig side by side in comfortable silence. Ellie finds George's old, rusty trowel buried near the bird bath. She holds it for a long moment, then hands it to Rob. "Use this," she tells him, her voice strong. "He'd like that you're still working the soil." Rob takes the trowel, the gesture signifying the smooth, peaceful integration of the past into the present. One rainy evening, they are attempting to make homemade ravioli, a process that quickly devolves into a flour war. Ellie, who is usually pristine, has dough matted in her hair. Rob, laughing heartily, wipes his hands on her hip, leaving a large white print. The electricity between them is a low, constant hum, the sound of easy, shared joy. Later, as they clean up, Rob comes up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. He simply holds her, letting the silence settle around them, a perfect, quiet peace. They talk, too, about their first marriages, their children, their fears of loneliness. They discover that their pasts, while different, share a common thread, a fear of being unseen, of becoming background noise. Now they are fiercely, completely seen by each other. The local charity gala, a glitzy, formal affair, is the biggest social event of the year, sponsored by the Senior Center's Foundation. Ellie has avoided it for 3 years. This year, Rob insists they go. "It's time, Elle," he tells her, adjusting his tie in her hallway mirror. "Time to stop hiding. Time to show them who you are now." Ellie, wearing a stunning, deep sapphire blue gown she hasn't worn since before George passed, looks magnificent but terrified. "They'll stare, Rob. Martha will make a scene." Then let her, Rob says, taking her hand. He squeezes it, transferring a jolt of his steady confidence. We have each other. No one else matters. They arrive at the gala. The atmosphere is opulent, chandeliers sparkle, champagne flows, and the jazz band plays softly. The moment they step into the ballroom, all conversation doesn't stop, but it shifts. The attention is a tangible thing, heavy and critical. And then there is Martha Hollis. She's at the head of a table of her most loyal, giggling sycophants. She spots them immediately. She waits for them to approach, a viper coiled in sequins. Ellie holds her breath. Rob's hand is warm and solid at the small of her back. Ellie, darling, Martha calls out, her voice loud and falsely sweet. I was beginning to think you'd decided to become a hermit. You haven't been at the center at all. But oh, my dear, you look, well, restored. The word is delivered with a subtle, nasty emphasis, implying repair after severe damage. Thank you, Martha, Ellie replies, trying to hold her head high, the muscle in her jaw twitching. And Rob! Martha turns her charm on him, her hand fluttering near his arm. So sweet of you to take Ellie out. It's wonderful that she has a friend to escort her. It must be so difficult for her, being alone in her lovely big house. That wonderful house George left her. Such a shame to waste it. She pauses, letting the implication hang. Rob is just a friend, a temporary escort, a charity case for the lonely widow. But speaking of George, Martha continues, leaning in confidentially, lowering her voice just enough to ensure the entire table hears her. I was talking to the foundation director earlier. You know George pledged a large donation right before he died, a very significant amount. And now, the estate has stalled on the payment. It's a bit of a scandal, honestly. It's the least you could do to honor his memory, dear. People are beginning to wonder if perhaps you're having some financial difficulties. The accusation is devastatingly public, hitting not only Ellie's pride but also George's legacy. It implies she is broke, dishonorable, and clinging to a man who is clearly only being kind to her. Ellie's face drains of color. The entire table is now silent, watching the drama unfold, their faces a mix of pity and vicious interest. The wave of humiliation she felt weeks ago is nothing compared to this crushing weight of public shame. Her composure finally snaps. Martha, that is completely uncalled for, Ellie begins, her voice trembling. Before she can defend herself, before she can sink into the abyss of her own shame, Rob steps forward. Rob moves from behind Ellie, stepping fully into the spotlight. He doesn't raise his voice, but his low, steady tone cuts through the tense silence of the ballroom like a steel blade. He doesn't address Martha or the table or the crowd. He speaks only to Ellie, but loudly enough for every person in the room to hear. Ellie, he says, his eyes blazing blue fire, full of fierce love and unwavering respect. He reaches into the pocket of his tailored jacket. The movement is slow and deliberate. He pulls out a small velvet box. He kneels down, a 70-year-old man, a man of quiet dignity and hard work, kneeling in the middle of a crowded, opulent gala. The entire room holds its breath. He opens the box. Inside, resting on white satin, is a magnificent single-cut diamond ring, sparkling under the chandelier lights like a captured star. It is modern, simple, and utterly permanent. He ignores the collective gasp. His eyes never leave hers. The night I told you I loved you, you tucked George's ring into your pocket. That meant more to me than you'll ever know, Rob begins, his voice thick with emotion. It wasn't a rejection of your past, it was a promise to our future. He reaches for her left hand, which she gives him without hesitation. Eleanor Armstrong, he continues, his voice ringing with a conviction that silences every malicious thought in the room. 4 years ago, I promised your husband I would look out for you. He knew I was the man who would always love you next. Today, I am fulfilling that promise, not to him, but to myself and to you. He slides the new ring onto her finger. The fit is perfect. I don't want to be your friend or your escort or your kind gesture, Elle. I want to be your husband. He looks up at her, his face a roadmap of devotion. Marry me. Let me stand beside you, in your garden, in your workshop, and at every one of these terrible parties. Ellie is weeping now, but the tears are of pure, unadulterated joy. She looks at the glittering diamond, then back at the man kneeling before her, the man who has protected her from shame and claimed her heart in the most public, defiant way imaginable. Yes, Rob, yes, I will, she whispers, pulling him up, embracing him with a fierce, secure grip. The crowd erupts. It's not just applause, it's a roar of genuine emotion, a release of the collective tension. Rob stands, holding her close. Over her shoulder, he finally looks at Martha Hollis, who is frozen, her perfectly made-up face a mask of shock and utter defeat. Rob's gaze is calm, final, and utterly victorious. He lifts his left hand and places his own wedding band, a simple, brushed gold band he'd bought weeks ago, waiting for this moment, next to Ellie's engagement ring. He hasn't put it on yet. He turns his attention back to Ellie. Before we go home, and before we do anything else, he says, his voice now a private, intimate murmur, as if they are the only two people in the entire ballroom. I need to make an announcement about that George Armstrong Foundation pledge. He takes a deep breath and addresses the room, his arms still firmly around Ellie's waist. There is no financial difficulty. The estate did not stall. I've been working with Ellie's lawyer to finalize the details. He pauses, his gaze locking with the foundation directors across the room. As of this morning, Ellie and I have converted George's pledge into a $500,000 endowment in both George's and my own name, the Armstrong Jenkins Community Fund. He squeezes Ellie's shoulder. The money is secured, the legacy is safe, and my wife-to-be is the most generous, bravest woman here. He smiles down at her, a look of profound, eternal love. Ellie, finally freed from her widow's armor and public shame, beams back, the sapphire dress radiant, the new ring blindingly bright. They have their history, their struggle, and now their future, publicly, beautifully, and irrevocably claimed.